right, welcome to the Good Enough Gaming Podcast, where a few elder millennials, we talk about all things gaming and nerdy. We dive into games, shows, movies that we like to indulge in. We celebrate our favorites and make fun of the few awful ones along the way. I'm your host, Kyle. Today, I'm joined by Jordan and Trevor. Daryl is having some severe internet technical difficulties, and you might notice we have a couple other guests with us. We have Lexi and Ben from the Dork Matters podcast. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here. So today's episode is entitled Graphic Tease for Sale. Just wait, it gets worse.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
I sell graphic tees.
Oh man.
It's one of my side
we'll do
hustles.
A plug at the end then.
I don't. No, you don't need to do that. Nobody needs that.
So every episode, Daryl, the one who's not here, gives me just amazing intro blurbs. So you're going to have to bear with me because this is going to hurt. Yep. Pixel this. You are navigating through a new game with an immensely vivid and engaging landscape with breathtaking visuals and style. What style are you imagining? What game are you thinking of? Anyone that is thinking Breath of the Wild needs to go play some other games. I'm joking, but not really. Whether it's monochromatic, cel-shaded, realism, pop, or pixel, games are full of art styles and choices that can really help make the game what it is. Today, like I said, we're graced with the presence of Lexi and Ben from Dork Matters to discuss all things that intertwines art and gaming. So, video games. Are they art?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, let's wrap it up and go home.
All right, done. We're good.
Yeah, good. Thanks, everybody.
How often do you get to see Kratos flossing, Kyle?
Yeah.
That's pure art.
That's pure art right there.
What we used to say in art school is that like anything can be art, and then you can open up the conversation about whether it's good art. But you know,
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna start classifying, then,
I love it.
I want to know, like, if we're looking in a purely video game aspect, is there a game that stands out to you from the top that qualifies as a really good artsy kind of game?
Yeah, when you get into video games, I think we have to sort of think about it a little bit differently than we might like just like aesthetics of you know, like 2D art or whatever, because you're looking at it holistically, like the story matched up with, you know, the art style as well, and you have to take it as a whole package. But yeah, do you have a favorite one, Lex, that you would call like art just off the top of your head? This is me stalling for time.
There's one that I think that's good. I appreciated you doing that because it gave me time to be like, yes. I think there's one that kind of, for me, encapsulates what it is like to be an artist. And I think that that's a really hard thing to explain to other people. So there's a game, Chicory, and it's about the whole artistic process and what happens when there's an expectation for you to continuously produce high quality work, always be on, and the blocks and the stress and the pressure that comes with that. And also kind of like the idea, like I'm going to get my words wrong, like the idol fascination where everybody is just so obsessed with you, and the pressure that can mount and how your inner demons start to take over. Plus, it's just like, it's a cute game. Yeah. It's super fun. You can kind of unplug your brain. But I thought that one to me was really, it helped me to explain to other people the stress of what it is to be an artist.
Yeah, there's a lot about legacy in that as well, that game, about the sort of legacy of what art is. And the expectations set by like a previous generation of artists, and how that influences what you're allowed to call art in, you know, in the next, you know, that's why we get things like modernism, postmodernism, etc. Each group is trying to push boundaries and figure out what art actually is versus the group that came before it. I love Chicory, as my son calls it. It's the doggy paintbrush game.
It is the doggy paintbrush game.
There you go.
And that's what we play for, the colors.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome though.
I still, honestly, with Chicory, I think it's a beautiful game. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the narrative. The big thing for me is I find it kind of aimless at times. It's not directed enough for me as a gamer.
Right.
And so, but that's expectation as well, which is like the root of all evil. It's just like my son calls it doggy paintbrush game, because that's what we play together for, is so that he can just paint things beautifully. So does it matter if I'm directed in a way that I'm used to with other narrative games? Probably not. Mm-hmm. It's a really good artistic game. The first one I think of as art is Braid. If you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
It's like one of the first indie darling games of, like the 2000 era. And it just tells this interesting story that I still don't quite understand. It apparently has something to do with Oppenheimer and like the creation of... Seriously, it's apparently about creating, the atomic bomb. I don't get that myself, but it's a fascinating game, a beautiful story, and like the mechanics were new and unique. That's probably the first one that comes to mind for me, or the first one where I was playing it and going like, this is something other than just a game. It's art.
Yeah. But it's like you say, like it's the holistic thing. There's a lot of games that I think are beautiful or have elements of the art. So we've talked about a couple different games. Jenny LeClue, for example, where I like the art style. Ben's not a huge fan of the art style, but I think that we both agreed that like the lighting in that game is gorgeous. Such a great way to like emote and tell the story. But I mean, that's kind of it for the game. Whereas then you have games like Firewatch that have like a beautiful story.
Yeah.
The game mechanics, like, they're not, like the visuals aren't as much, but like the writing in that is just so gorgeous. And then you have something really, really unique. Ben, I'm going to forget it. The Obra Dinn, which one is that?
Return of the Obra Dinn. It's one of my wife's favorite games. Sorry.
Have you been on this podcast before?
No, sorry. It just turns out that, middle-aged white guys all make the same jokes. She loves that game. It's total. Have you guys played it?
No.
Oh, you gotta check it out.
Yeah.
It's like it's like this weird sort of DOS pixelated art stuff, but it's rendered in 3D, and it's like this murder mystery that you have to solve. And the further you get into it, the more you like reach into the dark eldritch horror that's underlying everything, like underscoring it. And it's like just an atmospheric game. Its sense of place is so strong. It's
you
wild.
wouldn't say like the visuals are absolutely nothing fancy, but holy
they
crap,
work. They're
that's
a
a great
choice,
game.
right?
Yeah.
And that's like sort of an artistic thing. There is making a choice on like not just sort of having your art be happenstance, having it be an intentional thing chosen, right?
Like that kind of jumps out to me with a game. I don't know if you guys have played Limbo before.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the same thing, is in the sense that it's very simplistic, but at the same time it kind of brings across a very harrowing, dark, at some moments very horrific experience, but it's black and white, and some people have looked at that game and called it, it's a childish art style. There's really nothing like, in the conversation of like, well, graphics, what are the graphics in this video game like? And it's like, well, this game, that doesn't matter.
On subreddits, like, are the graphics good?
Yeah.
Can I run Crisis 3?
I feel like at this point, like we've hit this, like almost this peak of graphical realness, where if a game isn't like, looks exactly like a human, then like, where do we go from there?
Yeah.
Well, it's essentially life copying art. The way that Ben talked about is we've reached the realism stage of, the Renaissance and things like that. I also have an art degree. Hi.
This is about to get a little low. Yeah. Let's just pretend.
Very, very highbrow here. Yeah.
But in the same way, right? Like we've reached that limit where like we have the capability of doing that, right? You get games, you get Horizon, you get some of these other games that are extremely technical if you can run them properly. And now we've kind of like, we're in the postmodern of games, right? Where it's like, well, it doesn't have to be about how amazing it looks. It has to be about the writing.
Yeah, the writing, the gameplay,
and that's like its own art, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume you guys have probably at least seen or played Stray. Which would same favorite game in our household. Just a gorgeous game, but also just a huge discussion around, you know, the future of humanity and robots and AI and all this like kind of crazy cyberpunky stuff, right? But it's just it's interesting to see that now we've gotten away from not every game has to be, you know, a 10 out of 10 realism.
No, yeah.
And I love that stuff is coming back, because I feel like a couple of generations ago, you know, kind of at the tail end of the PS3, Xbox 360 generation, we were getting a little bit of that with kind of the inclusion of indie games that were starting to, you know, finally get the recognition that they deserve.
Sure,
and
like Xbox Live and stuff, and like the PlayStation Store, we're starting to get some real interesting stuff, and now that stuff is kind of floating on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, and like just going back through and doing some of my research for this episode, one of my favorite games of all time, and it still sticks out to me. You still see a lot of references to it in other games nowadays. Was on the PS3 called Journey. And you know,
right
that
now is going to be my next one to chat about.
Yeah, so like that game does
beautiful soundtracks ever. If you don't mind me interjecting, sorry.
No, not
Lexi's
at all.
used to this.
Yeah, just go with it.
We're used to Kyle doing it too. It's fine.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. But yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, a beautiful score. You know, the music is so good. But again, that simplistic kind of art style, and there's no dialogue in that game. There's no hand holding story. You know, there is a narrative there, but it's not force fed to you with dialogue.
To be discovered.
Yeah, and so that game, it's just beautiful.
Oh God,
that's perfect. You just sunglasses went on at the same time that you said that. Yeah. It's very No Man's Sky to me in that way, which I also consider very art. And you know, the narrative is like there's stuff there to learn about that universe, but you have to go and explore for it, and that is the art there to me. But for Journey specifically, like it's a very clear, like intentional art style.
Yes.
Like they've chosen to make it look a certain way, use a certain palette. So it's not what I guess like a group of we always talk about this on our show, like the term gamer, like there's a group of people out there that consider that to mean a certain thing, that, you know, you like to have your whatever TV HD is now, and you need all your realism, etc. What they consider to be good graphics, but like from my standpoint, it's definitely somebody who makes a more intentional choice about the style and look of the world, like something like Banner Saga or something as well. Patapon.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Banner Saga.
Cool.
Oh my God.
Even like Hades in that style.
Absolutely. Hades is definitely like it's a game, like there's a lot of these AAA titles that come out where you can see they've just sort of been milled through the engine that they have that makes things look realistic, and maybe they throw a little interesting color in. Some poor art person has done a lot of work, like coming up with really cool stuff that then just gets like smashed down into like 3D models and fit whatever they're working to. But
sounds like major corporations.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, don't get Kyle started.
Yeah.
We'll just go
it's heating up.
You've got 3 out of 5 here that I imagine are in that same vibe, at least that I know of. You don't get the most beautiful art by giant committee or by, you know, looking for share return.
Yeah. But I like what you said, Ben, about... Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. No, jump in.
Kitty cat. Just like the intentionality, and I think that's another big thing that like they talk about in art school. Just if you're going to do it, then you need to do the hell out of it, because then it looks like a mistake. And so some of these games you're playing and you're like, do you mean to do that? Yeah. And I more than anything, I love a commitment in anything. Like if you're going to do it, do the hell out of it. And so that's why certain games, like I love the full wrap around. And so you have like I'm thinking specifically about Hellblade.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the research of that team sent us. Oh, Ben, it's beautiful. It's a great game.
I don't know what this is.
Sound design. Sorry to interrupt, but the sound design on that game too is next level.
It's amazing.
Play with headphones on.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the second iteration of the game is coming out in the next little while here, but the first one came out, and it's basically it's looking at like a Celtic warrior type woman, but the team did all this work on sound, but they also did a lot of research into what post-traumatic stress disorder does to people. And so thinking about like the time of like Roman conquests in the UK and like that type of time frame, the amount of trauma that people would go through. And so like that small thing, and that's why like she's hearing the voices, that's why these creatures are kind of coming at her. Like it's amazing.
Would you call it art, Lex?
I would, because of like the research, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
you
and
know, I love a research background behind something.
I just want to point out, like, we've been focused on aesthetics here for the beginning part of this conversation, but like, there's more to what makes something art than that. Like, so you can go through that machine sort of generic, like 3D art, and still have a game that is art when other intentional choices are made. And I think that's what Lexi is getting at here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which you also might have stated very clearly. By saying what you're getting at, I'm reiterating it for myself because I can be pretty typical. Oh God, no! I did it again.
Not again.
Mansplaining to myself. I call it Ben-splaining. I like
No, you're just reiterating for understanding.
For my own understanding. Yeah, I'm a really slow computer, so it takes me longer to process things.
Ben's a computer?
Yes,
it's in the computer.
I'm a T84.
Oh no.
Tandy. I have a floppy drive.
Is that a Texas instrument?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's they're harder than people think of when they think floppy drives. Like, they're still pretty rigid.
Yeah,
okay, well, that's all right.
Say they're not completely floppy.
I mean, if there's a little bit of an S hook, I guess that's okay. So that's fine.
The important thing is that it scans properly when you put it in.
Yes. Yeah, I guess.
Is this anything? Like, this is almost a joke about sex, but I'm not sure if it is.
As long as you can download files accordingly.
There's some sort of penis illusion here, but I'm not sure if we quite nailed it.
Well, to bring it back, I think that's one of the most fascinating things about the video game industry as a medium is just it's a culmination of a bunch of different artistic kind of facets. Mm-hmm. And, it's not just music and audio. It's not just visual art. Even the way that gameplay mechanics can intermingle with one another. And like, you play a game and you're talking to a friend about it and you're like, this game just feels so good to play. Yeah. Everything just connects together and it's so smooth. It flows. Yeah. And I think, I think that kind of lends itself to this conversation as well.
Absolutely.
A clunky mechanic takes me out of a game. Like, I have put down many a game because I'm like, this is frustrating as fuck to play. Yeah. I don't have time for that.
And then think of the last time you really lost yourself in a game where you're like, I've been playing for far too long. I should get up and go to the bathroom perhaps. And for me, that was the Dig. Like, at one point I looked up and I was like, it is 4:00 in the morning and I'm just going to finish this because I'm too far in. But where you feel like you've kind of left your body and now
that's what we're looking for.
Tron,
that sweet out of body experience.
100%.
And
disassociation.
I would say with the inclusion now of like controller technology and like haptic feedback and that sort of thing, that's just another facet that sort of brings people that next level sort of like immersion into games.
It's another
I
tool.
can think back to
like another tool for an artist to use to paint their story or their brush or whatever. So used well, cool. Otherwise it can be like, what is this for?
Yeah.
Exactly. So like used well. So I always think back to Astro's Playroom on the PS5.
Yeah, that was a great little...
The best free game ever.
It's such a great proof of concept.
Yeah, that throw in, Yeah.
And like the best demo of what like the haptic controller can really do. And we've talked about this, in and out of the podcast here too, is that aren't very many companies that are using that as well as they could be now, because that's just another like somatic, like physical facet that
especially on like Xbox and PlayStation, right? Like that's one of the things I love about Nintendo is that their feature is the reinvention of sort of gaming process. And it forces, if you want to have a good game there, you have to think about like, even that though, like a lot of people aren't using those controllers and stuff to their, most interesting potential, but it happens at least a little bit more because that's one of the more primary tools that they have.
Yeah.
All I can think of is the guys who like take the Donkey Kong bongos.
To play a random game.
How? Well, I think people forget because I'm pretty sure on the Wii U, I don't know if it's on the Switch as well, but I'm pretty sure in the first Breath of the Wild, I'm pretty sure you could play the game like physically with the motion control.
Yeah,
I certainly did that for Twilight Princess.
But even for Skyward Sword, that was the whole point, is that you like held the controller aloft and then But I was, or even for like the...
That's the sound my sword makes when I swing it too.
Yeah.
Do the fishing
fucking fishing mini games.
Swords of
There was also Ape Escape, if anyone remembers.
Oh my God.
I sure do.
It was
I
when...
remember that the apes did get away though.
Many times with their little flashing lights on their heads. But it was the first time that I remember actually using like the haptics and being like, oh shit, this
matters.
This little monkey's trying to get away from me.
Yeah.
That
seems to be a sex joke too, but I don't know.
No. I'm an adult teacher. I don't make sex jokes.
That's off limits. Come on now.
At least not ones that the kids can understand.
It's funny because we were legitimately talking about this in our group chat today about haptic feedback and just about how few games now are utilizing it to its fullest potential. And the game that I had mentioned that probably, other than the Astros Playroom, which is basically a technical demo, the next best one is for me was Returnal. I don't know if anybody's played Returnal on PS5.
I have not.
But it's a roguelike game where you basically crash land on an alien planet. And then you're trying to uncover secrets as to like why you're there and how you ended up there. But immediately when you crash land and step outside of your ship, the planet's raining and you've got your spacesuit on and you can actually feel on the controller the individual raindrops as they hit the suit.
Yeah. It's really cool. Like the first time.
And like that's just one of the few things that game does to kind of add more immersion overall. And they do things with the triggers with different gun and weapon types. And that game it blew me away, right? It's 30 seconds and you're out of the ship. And it's like, oh, wow, this is something I've never experienced in a game before.
I'm surprised they haven't made that like a standard for any PlayStation exclusive. Like you're talking a AAA exclusive, like God of War had a tiny bit. But any of the other like major sales games, like I don't know about Forspoken or whatever, because no one really played that game. But yeah, I'm surprised. Going forward, I would like to see that more because I think that's a problem. Like that's just another step, right? That's another step of the artistry, like we said, especially with Astros. We're like, oh, this is so cool. Like it really brings you in versus just like, the classic. Like, I can be playing this I can be playing this on a PlayStation 1 controller without even the vibration and not notice the difference.
I mean, I could do without the blowing in the controller to make the fan move in the game.
Like the PlayStation 3, like PlayStation Move era.
Switch and Wii as well.
I could do without that shit, but everything I agree with.
Legacy game thing, the blowing of consoles.
The
cartridges, right?
There you go.
Please get rid of that video that I just did.
It's nostalgia. I'm going to make a full clip of that, Kyle.
Yeah.
There we go.
Great.
I like the idea of like losing yourself.
Me too.
Just when you're thinking about in the first Red Dead Redemption, the scene where you're walking and then the Jose Gonzalez song starts.
Yeah.
And that's something that like I think about still, like sometimes like I'm not
Lexi playing a game anymore. I'm there.
Yeah. I'm riding a horse and it's just I think of that, and I wasn't even playing, I was watching John play, and that song came on and I was like, I love this song. And then like I remember it so vividly, and I think that that's one of the magical things about games is that you can take all the different senses and you're more likely to remember that because you have all those different like triggers that will be like, oh yeah, I want to go play Ape Escape right now, even though it's been like 20
Am I allowed
years.
to pose a question here to everybody, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What is the first game, or the first game that comes to mind, I should say, when you think of like a game that made you go, wow? Like, I think Jordan just hit us with that really good one. And that's that, like that moment that I'm so fascinated in is like, you did this game, you played this, and like suddenly you had a moment that completely removed you from doing anything other than being in that game. And I think that's cool as hell.
I got a great one because I'm gonna jump on Jordan's, because this would probably be Jordan's next pick. Is Ghost of
you're gonna steal it from me. You're gonna
the intro to Ghost of Tsushima, where you get on the horse and you start riding through the field. You get a bit of the
chills still.
And you get kind of that Japanese movie feel to it.
And
Like, if you guys haven't played it,
I'm somewhere else.
Is by far one of the best game intros ever. Of like, you've kind of finished the little gameplay, tutorial mechanics. Prologue, and then
I
get
still
into it.
listen to that soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like, I have Ghost of Tsushima
Are generally the ones I tend to go back to too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But Trevor, that's a fantastic
your
one.
Your brother stole yours?
Checked.
Little brother, I assume?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
I'm trying to think. I don't get to play quite as many games as them due to children.
I feel you. I start a lot of games and have not finished so many. Pain. It's real.
That's it's so real. I think. Come back to me.
Okay. Do you mind if I jump in? I've got a.
You go ahead. Yeah.
I've got Uncharted, specifically the one Uncharted 2 where you're doing the train scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe that's
Phenomenal.
Uncharted 2, yeah. And you're just climbing up, and I'm like, this is, I am in fucking peril. Like, I know this isn't me, but me and this character are in peril. I completely believe that I could die here, even though we're at the very beginning of the game, and it just doesn't make any sense narratively for that to happen. But I'm so in this moment. It is so intense and so much fun and just cinematic, which I don't think necessarily needs to be what a game aims for. But in that one sense, it's stuck with me ever since playing it.
Yeah.
And then later on in the game, when you're jumping around that Tibetan temple, like trying to turn the giant prayer wheels, and they start dropping off and stuff. Like, it was just like the scope blew my mind.
It's very Indiana Jones. I love Uncharted. It's so good.
That entire franchise.
I'll never forgive them what they did to that movie.
Oh god, we didn't watch it.
Yeah, I never watched it.
Yeah.
There are worse movies, but there are better movies.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
think that's the worst thing you could do to Uncharted is just make it middling.
True.
Just
make it forgettable.
Yeah.
Lexi, what would be yours? I'm curious.
I'm really kind of torn between Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy IX.
I wish Jordan was here. Wish Daryl was here.
Daryl's a big Final Fantasy guy.
I mean, that's what Lex and I bonded over in college. Was like, oh, you play Final Fantasy 2? You're the first person I've met. Not Lex. She had tons of friends. I had none.
That's not true.
Lex was so popular.
Not even a little bit.
Well, now you got 3 new friends.
I had one friend.
Oh, it's great.
We're good here.
In art school, one friend is lots of friends.
Oh,
There you go.
I'll take it.
pretty good group in art school.
We had a
we're
good
still in
group
contact
of
with quite a few of them.
6.
Like the fact that we
that's
still
true.
talk is wild.
Can't get rid of them. 20 years plus. Oh my god, it's over 20 years. Anyway, I'm going to go with Final Fantasy IX.
Okay. It's a good one.
Although I do think the Final Fantasy VIII, like there's so many great moments. No. I'm changing my mind. Final Fantasy VIII, specifically the parade scene. Yes, Final Answer, parade scene, Final Fantasy VIII. Boom. That was one where I was like, oh.
The opera scene,
great.
Final Fantasy 3-6.
Oh, yeah.
And like,
that's a good one. You love the opera scene. You talked about that many times.
I played Final Fantasy, like the first couple up until that point. Like in North America, it's just 1 and 2 that you get, which is like, I forget which ones they are. It's 1 and then like 3 or something. But when you get to 3-6, it's just such a departure from what you're used to from playing like Nintendo games at that point. Like suddenly they want you to sing songs and like try to figure out the lyrics and keep tempo. And then like, it's just wild. It's out of nowhere. And I'm like, that was beautiful to me. That was art. That was something unique and interesting that hadn't been done before.
Yeah, that's
Also, the train suplexing.
is art.
there you go.
You just fucking suplex that train. Saban is. God, every character in that game is like a 10. Like they're all just firing all the time. Fantastic.
So good, yeah.
I feel like it's pretty rare where Final Fantasy doesn't have memorable characters.
Yeah.
You know, they're so so much larger than life, and it's hard not to remember
The
them.
only one.
Oh, and it's such a great way to connect with people. Like, I feel like I could walk in like a busy room and be like, Final Fantasy Tactics, and someone like is like, yes, we're friends now.
People perk up. Yeah.
Life connection. Yeah.
We should do an episode on tactics versus advance.
Oh,
like OG.
We should just play.
It's
love
so good.
tactics
I love advance
so much,
too.
and
They're both really good.
I had a screensaver at a school that I worked at years and years ago, and a kid stayed afterwards to come up and be like, I also like Final Fantasy
like, all right, don't
Tactics.
fucking
Like, it was just it was nice because then he was less of an asshole. He was
Well,
just
that's good.
like, I got you.
Oh.
Yeah, it was good.
Sorry for ruining that for not the first time.
Yeah, thanks for ruining the
memory.
wonderful
the one good
lovely
one.
memory
Yeah.
I have.
Teacher, I'm just sure that you're full of lovely, warm, heartwarming memories that make you feel good about what you do for a living.
And bear spray.
That's just what
It's all positive. Yeah, it's all positive vibes and bear spray, right? So that's the teacher way.
One time a kid brought me a donut, and I still think about that, and it was probably like
but you
10
didn't
years
know
ago.
as he
I'm like,
sneezed
you
on
just
it.
brought it for me. Not this kid. No, don't you take this from me, Ben.
Ruining memories in this
Down
podcast.
I'm
the
gonna
hall
bring-
and they're like, ugh, I guess I'll just give it to
I'm
Lex.
coming over to your house, and I'm going to bring so many donuts, and I'm going to be like,
I
which
won't eat
one,
any of
Ben?
them.
They're all your favorite, but they're all ruined.
Your children
Well,
will
they
be like,
won't care. They've got immune systems that are firing all off at this
So if
point.
he's got kids, he lives in a household of disease and plague.
So
Yeah,
terrible.
exactly.
One of them is
It
just
doesn't
picking up
matter
chunks
if
of
the
butter
donuts
and eating
have
it.
dirt on them or anything. It doesn't matter.
No, God, no. It won't stop them. I have two, and we call one tragedy and the other comedy. And that's pretty much their personality.
Love that. That's great.
Yeah, I know which one is
exactly.
which.
Their personalities are diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Can I just there was the last time I was over and we were going for ice cream, the little one was helping the bigger one find his hat, and he's like, it's okay, put on your hat. And I
It's
just
reversed
thought,
a lot.
God, you guys
Actually,
are awesome.
Big Brother has been just really coming into it lately. The last couple of weeks with being a big
Hey,
brother, it's
good
super awesome.
job.
It's cool to see. Is this a parenting podcast now?
It's become
It's a variety
Variety
podcast.
show.
Yeah.
Just like the
Yeah.
Muppets.
Ooh, we can sing and dance next.
I mean-
It's like everyone just brings up their.
Does anyone own a
This
Muppet?
is how. Oh,
Yay!
Currently own a Muppet? I used to own all of those McDonald's NHL Muppets from the All-Star game in
God.
1998.
Oh, shit. Yeah, it's a throwback.
Do we remember there was one of our art school crews, Smashley? She's fine with this. I've asked many times. When we would go out to the bar when we were young and cool, if boys wouldn't leave us alone, she would do a Muppet dance, and they would immediately just scatter to the wind. It was great. She would throw her head back and it was just such beautiful things.
Kind of like doing the Elaine Bennis dance. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, with all of this time, Kyle, did you think of one? Or did that TikTok
No.
ADHD get to you?
Yeah, love it.
no, I brought it back. I was waiting politely for the
Get through the
tangent,
Muppets.
the Muppet
Terrible
tangent to
talking guest,
subside.
Stop.
Kyle, it's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
On the Muppet Show tonight.
Fuckers.
Waka waka.
Okay.
Oh God, Ben.
So mine were the last time I actually got lost in a game that wasn't Ghost of Tsushima. It was a little ways back, PS4, and I tried replaying the game when it came out on the PS Plus Extra, and it wasn't the same, and it kind of sullied the memory a bit for me. But Assassin's Creed Black Flag,
Yep.
Oh,
sailing on the ocean with the pirate shanties.
Fuck yeah.
I
Shanties.
didn't even do shit in the game. I just
Because
sailed
you wanted to
around
sing some
and listened to
shanties.
pirate shanties.
That's,
I was actually listening to pirate shanties the other day
I listen to
on
them
my
constantly.
Oh my god, dude, they're so good, right?
Did you watch Black Sails?
I did
Black
a
Sails.
bit.
You gotta watch Black Sails. Like that is one of the most impressive intro songs. Bear McCreary, that little like, I'm not gonna do it because that'll be shitty. But I love that show. I love pirates. Pirate history is wild.
Can we just be like best friends now?
It's a pirate podcast.
That's how adults make friends, right?
We'll just do.
Be best friends.
Oh my god!
Podcast.
This is
do
literally
karate
why
in the
Lex and I
garage?
started our podcast. Like, it's a pandemic and we can't talk or hang out with people, so let's just talk on the internet.
I actually have like a pirate themed half sleeve.
Oh, way to go!
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Is it like,
Do you guys like? Can I go get a snack or like leave you guys for a little
let's see.
bit?
The three of us.
I'm going to show you real
I
quick,
need
just
to
because
know,
it's like
we're looking
like-
at the internet. I can see a skull. That's about it.
It's a skull moon with a skeleton pirate,
Oh, dope!
and he's got some booty.
and then on the inside, on the bicep,
When you flex, it's cracking.
when you release the kraken.
It's cracking. Jesus,
Oh boy.
way to go!
It's no surprise that my son knows what the pirate music is because I listen to like the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtracks.
I had it on yesterday. I just want to live a pirate life. Is that so wrong? But also be a responsible, parent who takes care of his kids.
Yeah.
I feel like
I think
those don't
go
go.
together.
I'm not sure that they do. Sorry to ruin that for you.
Yeah, it's one of the best things about Black Sails is the combination of like real life pirate history with like this really great narrative. But anyhow, that's not a video game, so sorry.
Well, but have you seen Our Flag Means
Our
Death?
Flag Means Death is
Yes.
fantastic as well.
Yeah, that one is really good too.
Another great like historical history rich.
History rich is a good
and
way of
also
looking
very
at
funny.
things. What's your favorite history rich video game? Mine's Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Wow.
Wolfenstein.
I remember when that happened.
Yeah.
That was a good pull.
Okay. I think we're gonna take a little bit of a break to recoup from that. This week we've got a very special treasure trove, as we've got a couple guests here. So we're gonna lead into that. So take it away with the treasure trove. Treasure trove.
Well, this week's episode of the Treasure Trove is obviously a pretty exciting one. We've got two amazing guests here with us. I always am very interested and kind of curious, getting guests involved with the Treasure Trove, and it gives me the chance to not have to talk as much, which is always nice too. So,
He said from his podcast.
Yeah,
Hey.
interesting hobby.
Kyle is the host, and he demands his voice to be heard. Okay,
So you're sort of like the straight man in the like comedic duo or whatever.
basically, yeah.
The Kermit to his Fozzie.
Hey, there you go. See, I like that one. Yeah.
Teller? You the teller? Or is it the pen?
Yeah.
The teller.
Which one can't talk?
Teller.
That's the one.
Teller.
Is that Teller?
Yeah, that's,
I can never tell them
I think it's
apart.
Teller. I think it's Teller. Okay, well, I will leave mine to the end. Let's hear it. What's the treasure trove pick for this week?
I'm gonna go with Night in the Woods.
Okay.
If anyone's familiar, no
I
one?
know.
No one?
You know I am because I introduced you to
Yeah,
it.
Bueller. It's so really wonderful game. When did it come out, Ben? 2020?
Close enough. Who cares?
Yeah. Oh wait, I've got it here. 2017 single player adventure developed by Infinite Fall. Really great game, and one of the reasons that I love it so much is because of the ambiance that it creates. Like if you ever want to feel desolate, devoid of hope, promise of tomorrow, but in a really cute animal world with
That's also
beautiful
sort of
like
spooky.
cartoons. It's also
Okay.
kind of creepy.
Yeah.
It's such a great game, and so the backstory behind the development team is really not great, and so there's a lot of controversy that's come with the game, which is really unfortunate because it's such a wonderful game. And I think, Ben, they're coming out with another game pretty soon, aren't they?
They're working on another one. Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
a cat during like witch era or whatever. You
Yeah.
play a cat during a magical Pennsylvania town.
You got Trevor's attention with Cat.
Yeah.
Cat game.
Okay, so Night in the Woods is a cat game as well. Your main character, May, is a anthropomorphic cat who has returned to her small shitty town after dropping out of college. And is watching how much further it's decayed. Yeah, it's like an animal world, you know?
Oh,
yeah, it's like if they were to go back to Detroit and see how like a mining town has really fallen out, and so people are moving away from the town.
Right.
All of your high school friends are still there, living their shitty high school lives, like working at the video store, and you just kind of go about living your shitty life, playing bass guitar in your parents' attic, and then this just amazing mystery unfolds that you get to participate in, all while being a cute kitty cat.
Sweet.
Okay.
So I'm guessing then it's night with an N, not with a K.
Yeah. NIGHT.
And
Night in the Woods.
Available on consoles as
Literally
well.
everything. iOS,
Everything.
Switch, Steam, Itch.
So produced by Finji, Infinite Fall development team. Amazing.
Yeah, that group has the two that sort of made the game itself, not the problematic gentleman who worked on the music for the game, which is brilliant and fantastic. But they've gone on to form another game company, a collective that's really cool. It's like a creator, like everybody in the company owns the company and they all work on the game. There's not that many of them.
Nice.
It's a really cool concept.
Yeah, I like that. That's really awesome. Cool. Well, very good choice. That's definitely on my list. I'm gonna have to check that out. The name is super familiar. I feel like I've maybe seen like the title screen or a couple images, but definitely not something I've played. So I'm gonna have to check that out for sure. But Ben, on to you.
Okay,
Curious.
mine is a little bit, you've probably heard of it, but it's a new game to me, which is why it's sort of a treasure for me. And I feel like if I didn't know about it, there's got to be other people that haven't heard of it yet. It's called Vampire Survivors.
Okay. All
right, we got a little recognition here, but this is a game that was recommended to me by one of my tattoo artists. Shout out Taylor. And I played like the first 5 minutes of it and I was like, why would anyone keep going with this game? And then suddenly it was like 100 hours later, I've 100%ed this game. And it's just like, what the fuck happened? I'm addicted to this. And I'd be like, okay, kids, go play in the other room. Dad's got to do some work on his phone.
He's busy.
But it was a game that's developed by this one person. I'm just trying to find my notes here. It's difficult for me to do anything. It came out in 2022. It's a roguelike, like shoot 'em up video game. The functionality is super basic. You get a weapon to start with. It's an auto shooter and you need to fight back hordes for like 15 minutes or 30 minutes, however long, and not die. And you get upgrades and stuff like that. And it is actually difficult for me to place my finger on what is so like, I think it's the VLT nature of it, like the bright lights and like sounds and stuff. It is just full of so many unlocks and like callbacks to like gaming culture as well. And like just little in jokes that I really loved. Like you can unlock a character with a Konami code. It's like, it's a game done by, his name is Luca Galante, just this one Italian dude. And you can tell he loves video games. Like he might not like, this is one of those art intersections too, because like it's a pixel game. I like pixel games. This isn't the most refined work. It wasn't something that is going to win awards for like aesthetics, but like, it's just captivating. And I've played so much of it. It's 100%ed now and I still won't take it off my phone because I'm like, I like opening this up and just like getting different weapons and getting different upgrades. My favorite thing about the game though, it's called Vampire Survivors. There's not a single goddamn vampire in this game. Not a single one. So yeah, basically player controls an automatically attacking character while fighting continuous waves of monsters. In spite of the game's name and key art, none of the variety of monsters encountered are vampires.
There's bats, isn't there?
There's bats. Bat isn't a vampire unless it's transformed, and we don't know. We don't see them transform back. So to me, those are just bats.
So
Darkness.
if you like that style, have you tried Survivor IO?
I actually just got told about that today. So we're going to see, because I did not think I would like this style. This is generally the kind of game I would not do. And it's a credit to whatever Luca did here that it's just like, there's something about it that just keeps you going.
I feel like he chose the vampire aesthetic for the name and the box art just because it catches your attention.
It's definitely got a Castlevania vibe to it, the aesthetic and the characters that you do unlock. Yeah. But you also can play as a tree at some point. That's a bit of a spoiler. You can unlock a secret character that is literally a fucking tree that can't move unless you get upgrades. It just fires and you're stuck there.
Helps you branch out.
I didn't think anyone could out dad joke me, and here we are. You win.
The new best friend duo.
Yeah, there you go.
The dad cast.
I just thought I would get in touch with the roots of the game, and
oh boy, that joke is paper thin.
Let's leave it alone, Jordan.
It's fun.
It didn't make sense. That's the best part. You just say words now after a while.
In this group, it works though.
Yeah. Oh, your bark is worse than your bite.
Stop! We need one of those big hooks.
Oh, you're just being a bit sappy.
There we go.
Someone hit the gong.
Oh, nice. Jeez.
Yeah,
Jeez,
there you go.
Oh my god.
There
you go. That's a good way to end that one.
That's it.
The worst part is we have a friend of our pod and real life Jason Memo who can outdo any of this.
He's
and
great.
His delivery is so dry and he's not a dad yet.
He's a cat dad, Ben.
He's a cat dad, sorry. My
just
apologies.
loves his puns.
Yeah. And sorry.
I need to do a pun. Might need to do a pun podcast spin-off.
Pun counter.
All right, another
pirate puns.
Another Pokemon podcast. We're coming.
Puncast.
Oh, sorry. Speaking of puns, we had a Pokemon episode where I took the original 151 and used as many Pokemon name puns as I could through the whole episode.
That sounds difficult.
Because that's all Kyle could contribute.
It was so fun. That's all I could contribute.
Yeah,
we should ask them. We should ask the question. So, the fighting type Pokemon, Machop, etc.
Yeah.
Are they born or hatch from their eggs with the shorts on? Or is that, do they wear the clothes, or is that part of their, skin?
I think the definitive answer is...
No, Ben. We've already talked about this.
All right, but I've actually thought more about it since then.
I know we talk about it a lot, but I want to hear what the community here thinks.
I feel like he gets the shorts after being born, because that would be like you getting your colored belt for, being whatever fighter you are.
But there's other Pokemon that have clothes, though. That's the confusing part. And they're all the same. I feel like they're born with clothes.
But is it clothes or is it skin or fur or something?
Creepy. I don't know.
Is it like a weird flesh suit or what is it?
Flesh cape. Flesh cape.
No.
Flesh cape might be one of the worst sentences I've ever heard.
Diablo 4.
It's not great.
I feel like the older I get, the more of a flesh cape I have hanging off my back. It's dangling. It's like pancake batter in a Ziploc. Getting old is fun, folks.
It's like a stick of butter being left out in the sun all day. Is that
exactly?
Yeah.
Pancake batter in a Ziploc bag.
Don't do it. There's lumps too. Sometimes you just find them in there. Getting your check.
Gotta get the whisk in there.
Yeah.
Still
Work it up a little bit.
It's a short circuit reference, which we don't really reference anymore after we found out that it is a bit racist.
Problematic
fave.
All right, Jordan, let's bring it back to your treasure trove.
Sorry.
This might be the longest treasure trove in history, by the way, for us. No, it's all staying in. Yeah, so back to Ben's game. It's interesting that you mentioned that of all games this week, because I've got a coworker of mine who bought it on the Switch a week ago.
Yeah, it just came out there.
I've heard about it ever since. He can't put it down, and every time I talk to him, it's Vampire Survivor. You got to check it out. It's free on Game Pass for Xbox, so if anybody's got Game Pass, PC or console, it is there. I've downloaded it myself after being smacked in the head at work many times, being told I have to play it. So yeah, it's just kind of funny that came up today as a treasure trove game. But to wrap it up so we can get on with the rest of the episode here. My pick is a game called Cuphead.
Yeah.
A pretty well known, like, smaller game. It's made by Studio MDHR. It's basically, if you ever remember watching, for our listeners, like the old school 1930s fucking Mickey Mouse cartoons. That's basically what they've done as the art style to this game. It's a platformer, side-scrolling shooting game, and they've done a lot of like crazy different characters, and the boss fights are insanely difficult. It's one of the hardest games that I've played in the modern era, even though it looks the furthest from a modern game. If you're used to like those old school side scroller games, even the top down, like shoot 'em up games like Galaga or any of the airplane ones, it kind of feels like that, but just with a little bit more platforming involved. Art style is absolutely gorgeous. It's a very unique, very cool looking game. Even the music and everything is actually really good too. It's super catchy. And I think by now, yeah,
Saskatchewan made.
Yeah. So like,
Because what else are they doing there?
gotta have something to do out there, right?
Yep.
So yeah, highly recommend that game for anybody looking for a challenge. You can usually find it on sale pretty cheap nowadays too, like $10-15. And yeah, the art style is absolutely worth checking out just for that alone.
I think as an adult, that's the last time I had a temper tantrum, was playing that game, because I was like, why are we even playing this game? It's not even fun.
I can't handle it.
Clearly not a fan of Dark Souls, I see.
No, no, not so much.
I don't know. I just can't put that much time into something that then forces me back into redoing it. It pulls me out personally.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, that game is its own special sort of hell, because I've played Dark Souls and Bloodborne and all that stuff, and I quite enjoy the difficulty and the grind with those. But like, to Ben's point, this game, if you die, you start from the very beginning.
I can't.
There is no progression or checkpoints of any kind. And so, yeah, just the level of frustration, almost killing a boss and having to start from scratch again, it is.
Yeah.
So you might as well just install it in like an arcade machine in your house and just like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much how it's run.
Start over.
Yeah.
So speaking, like, that's actually a great segue, because Cuphead was one of the ones that I was going to bring up, talking about like sort of unique art styles within the game. I'm wondering if you guys have actually heard of one. It's called Scarlet Deer Inn. So it's one it's coming out soon. It's actually, all of the animation is stitched.
Yes.
Oh,
So it's like embroidered.
Yeah.
Scarlet Deer Inn.
Yeah, because there's that. There's also been
like an animal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
because there's also been the rise of like hand painted games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of
Crazy.
very unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is stitched.
Yeah.
Wild. It looks beautiful.
Right. Like it is a very, like, I mean, talking about aesthetically pleasing, but also like the process of building this game, I think,
How
is
do you make this?
right.
I don't understand.
It's extremely
Is this like
unique
40
in the way
years
they do
worth of
things.
work in like 17 just different warehouses full of people
You
stitching?
can get embroidery machines
Okay.
where you design it
exist,
and then
yeah.
it just like,
It just stitches it out.
Essentially, they do
Yeah.
stop motion animation for each of like the moves or whatever the character can do, and then it's just like on loop. But it's a very cool concept. It's pretty
But
crazy.
then, like,
Well, it's
are the backgrounds and
gorgeous.
foregrounds all stitched as well? And
Yeah. All of the game is stitched art,
it's wild.
that's really cool.
I love
which
it.
is wild.
Yeah.
It came up on, I don't know what I was scrolling, but it popped up and I thought it was extremely unique and thought it was a just very
What a cool idea.
Yeah.
right,
What kind of a
like
wild
someone that is doing
masochist
something
was just like, this is it. This is what
yeah,
I
this
need
is
to do.
yeah. Now, a bit more on the popular side of unique art styles, a franchise that Jordan, Trevor, and I really enjoyed ourselves, Borderlands, if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
A bit more like cell shaded with
heavy
sort of unique accents. And I found that game to be really, it's sort of like fireworks explosion at some points when you're playing with the guns, but the character design, the levels, everything around it, I found to be very unique in the way they did their art style for the game itself.
Especially when Borderlands 1 came out, like that was so different when it first came out. That really sparked a lot of games that are kind of similar, whether they're first-person shooter or not. But like Borderlands 1, I think, especially because it was slower and not so like visual diarrhea with the guns. That one was huge. I remember that being so big when it came out. Like, this is so cool and like edgy and different.
It was like the closest that we got to a comic book, like handled comic book art.
Comic Zone.
Yeah, kind of like being thrown into a game. It's been done to death now. There's lots of games that have that kind of style. But like Trevor's right, at the first Borderlands, I can't think of anything else at the time that was doing that type of art style.
Do you know if it precedes Telltale games or... Because they kind of do the same vibe.
It does. Yeah. Borderlands 1 was out first, and then the first Walking Dead Telltale series, I think, was a few.
They started
because there was the Wolf Among Us, and that was like one of the first ones, and that one's like fairly old, but I still think Borderlands was a couple years on that one.
Wild.
But if you're looking for a really good comic book style game, like I always go back to like one of the most beautiful games I can think of is Disco Elysium. Just for that whole art style is just so gorgeous. The game itself is just like a shit show adventure. It is. It is just madness. Like that first scene, where you die immediately and you're like, what the fuck just happened? Like I just started playing.
And trip in the bar. Yeah, sorry, spoilers, but...
Game's been out for a while. Figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. What the hell are you doing with your life?
Yeah. There's one,
but there was like comics released with it as well too, and like tons and tons of like concept art books and things, and so absolutely gorgeous game. And that's something that, like, we've talked about this before, like the frustration of what you see in your head and what you're trying to produce as an artist doesn't always mash up. And that's like when I'm trying to work on comics and things like that, what I see in my head is basically like Disco Elysium, and what I produce is like poorly drawn Calvin and Hobbes, basically.
Well, if you drew the Calvin and Hobbes better, it'd be good.
Well,
it's a real winner.
It is.
I think you draw great, and you're being way too hard on yourself.
Thank you very much. That's nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's even harder to, that's what art directors are for. You have to manage, teams of thousands of people to try to affect one sort of outcome artistically. I imagine they missed the mark on what they were going for initially a lot of the time. Maybe not, though. I don't know. I don't make video games. That's too hard.
Well, I'm curious just to get the mix of the kind of the art, I guess, from movie art into video games. I assume you guys maybe have seen something about it, but the Pixar team that transferred and became the team that made Kena.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
So that
game is amazing.
Yeah. So that was one.
Beautiful.
I was going to say, when we were talking about immersive games, that there's a moment later in the game where you dash through a door and it goes from gameplay to Pixar level cinematic in like probably one of the best examples of the new like PlayStation 5 new era loading times. Mm-hmm. And that to me is probably one of the most immersive gaming moments that I've ever had in kind of the recent years.
And it's such a great story too. Like
it really is.
Playing through it, and the art style, and like it looks like it would be for little kids, but it's actually quite
pretty dark.
It's pretty dark, a little challenging. But the story of it, like the masks and everything, I wish there was more of that. I do hope that there's more games, because the universe that they created in that is just, it's something where you just are like, but I want to go over there now. Like I just want to keep learning more of the lore around it. Ben, have you heard of it before? I think you'd love it.
No, I hadn't heard of it. But what I was thinking of is just sort of like first time playing The Witcher or even Breath of the Wild, where you realize, oh, I want to go over there. And then you're like, oh, I can.
You can.
I can go over there. That was a whole new interesting. For me, that was World of Warcraft the first time I played it.
That's
massive. So especially Blizzard at the time, like now their aesthetic feels too machined or too like, you know, brand guidelines to death. But like at the time, it was still fresh and felt like a real, like it was a beautiful game to me. I spent most of my initial time playing just not doing anything, just wandering around and looking at these vistas, which now would be laughable, but at the time they were blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Standing on the, you know, Casmodan dock or whatever, that giant like dam that they have there, and just being like, wow.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can jump off this. You can't. you can. You just don't live.
They've released the next trailer for the next edition of the Final Fantasy VII remake. And so they're leaving Midgar, and I just remember like playing Final Fantasy VII originally, and you leave Midgar, and you're like, "Oh, it's amazing!" And it's just like a flat green field versus what it is now. God, it's amazing.
That I think is probably one of the biggest like glow ups in video games ever.
No question.
In terms of remaster, remake, whatever you want to call it, like that. Like I think Jordan and I, and of course Daryl, who unfortunately is not here, like Daryl platinumed that. He's played the little intergrade thing, like he's done everything, and that is by far one of the best looking games, especially being taken from such a, you know, thing from the 90s, right? Like such a blocky, clunky thing.
And you know what's wild? I mean, if I think about the 90s game, how they've remade it is how it always was in my imagination. Anyway.
That's how you envision it.
Yeah. It was
that's like we've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast, but like just the conversation about remastering a game versus remaking it from the ground up on a new engine and new art style and everything else. And like to me, Final Fantasy VII Remake is the template that every developer should have to work off of if they want to bring back a franchise.
It threads that needle of being, it is the game, but it's new. There's enough there that is different and new, that it is a experience for somebody who's played the original game that is not just, a recreation.
Yeah.
Well, and we've all been in that situation before where, you know, the rose tinted goggles or glasses of your childhood memories playing a game, and then they bring a port of it or a remaster to current gen systems, and you play it for 20 minutes and you're like, ooh, maybe this wasn't as good as I remember it.
Well, it's like what Kyle was saying earlier, going back to that, revisiting that game you enjoyed. I did the same thing with World of Warcraft like a couple of years ago. I was like, I haven't played this in like 15 years, but let's just go see what it's like. And it was terrible. I walked in and I was like, this looks like, a Christmas tree threw up. Like, this is...
Not the same experience.
I played up until Cataclysm, I think, and then I had to quit. It was just like it was too much.
It's a lot too. Doing guilds or whatever they call them, clans, and like trying to keep up with like raiding schedules.
Not about that life.
Not compatible with real life. No. I'm almost out of things to talk about, guys. I mean, like I could talk about myself.
I can still talk about Final Fantasy IX for like another solid hour.
We're gonna do a whole Final Fantasy IX episode, Lex, because they are remaking it.
No, they're not. That's it. No, they're not.
No, there's a real one.
No, because that video that I sent you was just like a proof of concept.
But there was an announcement that came out like maybe a month ago that they officially
Don't you do this to me. No, Ben, no.
I'm not trying to lie to you. That doesn't mean that I'm not lying to you by accident.
I just want to double check this, that you two aren't married, right?
Well, the thing is about being irritating is that anyone sort of seems like they're married to you then. You just bother everyone.
Well, I think we might have to have like a collab Redux episode where we have Daryl on and he can talk Final Fantasy till we all go to sleep at night.
Anyone on who wants to dork out about anything specifically, we can pick something and deep dive into something ridiculous.
I was going to say,
we do love our deep dives.
Let's take a turn here. Can you guys tell us about your podcast? I guess since it's half the reason you're here.
Yeah, your award nominated podcast.
Yes, recently. We're very proud of that. We go back and forth being between like, I really like what we're doing, to being like, should we just fucking stop this whole thing? So any little bit of validation keeps us going for another year. So that's your warning. Be careful.
We got one more year.
Yeah, we got a year 3 now because we got award nominated.
Yeah, it's totally how that works, right?
I think so. I mean, it keeps my interest.
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty fun.
I am on the edge of like starting a new podcast though, like every week. Like
Pirates.
We have
Cryptids.
we have 2 really exciting upcoming projects that we're looking at, podcast and then like a graphic novel comic endeavor that's coming up. And so the podcast has been this really wonderful conduit to those things. And so
that's a creative outlet for us. Yeah, it's called Dork Matters. It's a dorky podcast for dorks. It's hosted by Lexi Hunt, your Ed Dorkator, and me, Ben Rankle, your dad dork. That's usually what I say when we start the show.
Say. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really given us an opportunity to talk to lots of other dorks about things that they love. And so it's ranged from like mental health and video games to comic book novels, Jesus. Graphic novels from Korea. And even like chess. Like I think that's my other one is the chess.
Chess was a good
podcast
episode.
Was great.
That's because fun. Jess is an actual professional podcast person. That is our editor/producer, Jess. She does it professionally.
About the butt probe for the cheating.
Yes.
Like that was mind-blowing.
Yeah, many people who cheat use a butt probe.
Okay.
I didn't know.
Wouldn't have guessed that.
It probably did not happen that way. But please do check out that episode if you want to learn more.
Yeah.
About chess, not about probes.
Both. It's a twofer. We spend probably an unnecessary amount of time on the butt plug aspect of it. That's really the hook.
I love how when I listened to that episode over, the interest. Like we sound so curious. Like, so was it really far up? Like, is there a person in the audience controlling the butt plug?
Is it like supposed to work?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and it turns out it was a remote, or at least theoretically a remote.
Yeah. So listen now.
So you got to hear first. So Dork Matters for all your chest and butt plug needs.
Chest and butt plug needs. Yeah, we're one of those really brave podcasts that has not narrowed down our focus and thus has no audience. But at least we've got that award.
Nomination.
Yeah.
Well, in your head, you already won. So
no, in my head, I didn't, and we don't need
It's a moral victory. It's a moral victory.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah.
I really appreciate y'all having us on.
Thank you.
We appreciate you guys coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Too much, but you can fix that.
Oh, shut up! It's a podcast.
I don't fix a whole lot in post.
No, he just does the good enough.
Otherwise, I'd be releasing 15-second clips every week. So.
We did one episode where I didn't record at all, and it was our best ever.
Oh, it was so good.
We've done that too. We've done that. Hey guys, I really hate to say this, but we got to redo that whole thing.
Have you lost many episodes? We've only lost one completely.
I think two.
One or two.
Oh, that's not bad.
It hurts.
We lost one. We lost one on Riverside, like our first time coming onto it, because Trevor's browser wasn't updated or something.
Oh God, that's bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was the dumbest thing. We couldn't figure it out
and then
until
we lost one. Like
we did
back, like season 1.
Yeah.
We did lose one with a guest, which sucks.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Because that one, now you got to get somebody else involved and reschedule.
Yeah.
And thankfully, she was
back, are they?
phenomenal.
I'm good.
Like
Shout out to Roxy. She's
Thanks for coming
fantastic.
back.
So please come back.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you guys so much for coming. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys had a good time.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
I think this episode was good enough.
It's good enough.
Is that how you end it? I love it.
Yeah, it was good enough.
I think it was good enough.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for more content. We also invite you to write an email or join us on Discord to talk about anything from our episodes or something else you would like to discuss in the future. Please subscribe to the Good Enough Gaming Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. And remember, we might not be great, but we are good enough.